Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing really well. I hope you had a great weekend. Back with our latest AI news, bringing you our views. Before we dive into it, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, do all those amazing things. And let's dive straight into it, Will.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I've got a good one that you sent me over the weekend. I'd heard about it at the tail end of last week and going into the weekend, and I think that it's really interesting because it leads quite well on from the story that we talked about last week. Let me share my screen. Where is it? There it is. This story is taking a look at Anthropic, which, if you don't know, you're seeing for this for the first time. We mentioned Anthropic a lot. It's a frontier AI company over in America. Their primary thing is Claude models. The Claude models are, you give it credit where credit's due. Very good models. They focus on coding, and they are arguably the best coding AI models in the world. And what they do, Ben, just to give you a little bit of a backstory, is that they have two business models. They have one, which is their API access. So you pay per token, essentially, or per million tokens for access to their models. They're very expensive. An average developer would easily spend probably $1,000 a month on API tokens, using just their API. So to combat that, Anthropic have released something called their Claude Coding plan, which is basically subsidized Claude Code, upwards of 70% of a discount. So the average developer can get in at $20 a month. Most people will sit there at around $100 a month. And then for the real power users, you'll be paying $200 a month. Now, this story is the fact that forever, it's no news that forever Anthropic has always said it's against their terms of service to use their Claude coding plan with any other tool other than Claude Code. They're protecting their ecosystem. And this didn't stop people, to be honest with you. Massive names like Open Code have always offered backdoors to use your Claude coding plan with their open source tools. And now most recently is Anthropic have decided that enough is enough, and they are putting their foot down, as you can see by the tweet here that was put out. Yesterday, we tightened our safeguards against spoofing the Claude Code harness after accounts were banned for triggering abuse filters from third-party harnesses using Claude subscriptions. So I think this is in direct response to the threat from outside tools, outside models, from using what is one of the best coding models in the world. They're seeing the tools improving. They're seeing the local models improving. They're seeing people abusing, their terms of service, and they've decided to cut back on it. So I understand why they've done it, but I think for me, this is a demonstration of where the community is going, what people want. And, this is them, instead of thinking about it and trying to delegate access, I think they've just gone, nope, and cut it out completely.
Interesting, Will. Interesting. So do you think they're just playing the game like any big tech company, that they just literally say, use our ecosystem, nothing else? Yeah. You can't, access our intelligence via any other means. If you want it, you've got to basically plug into us, and everything's going to be through us, and that's it. Do you think it's just a case of they are just doing what a corporate does in that sense? Or do you think they're actually threatened from, the open source world that's moving at a rapid rate in terms of innovation, small models, optimization, all this type of thing? Do you think they're actually threatened, or is it just a corporate game that they're going, you want to use us, you play by the rules of our game?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think that Anthropic, economically, they offer Claude Code at a huge subsidized rate. They slash what the API costs would be, and they will quote reasons, and they have quoted reasons, for example, that if you're using a third-party harness to plug into Claude Code, is they can't monitor token usage, they can't analyze how that tool uses their Claude coding plan, and they say that something like Open Code, which was one of the biggest violators of these terms of service, they can't tell how they're using their API and their Claude Code API, and therefore that abuses happen. So they quote that kind of thing. But I think there is also a deeper threat here to, one, the tools that surround it, because they obviously build Claude Code as a CLI. They build it into VS Code as an extension, as well as web versions and app versions. So they have this ecosystem along with the best coding model in the world. And if really well built open source tools start to take over in preference over Anthropic's own internal tools that they sell out as part of their ecosystem, then that's the beginning of the end, isn't it? Anthropic is left holding the bag. They're paying for the party where other developers are just choosing to use other tools. And then you'll see the rise of local models, open source models, open weight models as a preference. And developers are already going to be using the open source tools like open code, like Nano Coder. And what will happen then is they'll just know, well, I can just switch to these local models because they're now good enough. I'm already using the tools that support them. So I can just switch to the models really easily. And then suddenly Anthropic's business model is really under threat. So I think, to answer your question, Ben, it's a bit of both.
Do you see them being under threat yet, or is that an emerging trajectory we're going to see over the next 6-12 months?
I think it's definitely emerging from my point of view. Is we're now starting to see, as we have spoken about at length, the capabilities of smaller models, cheaper models, and how that is improving. I think over the next 12 months, that is only going to continue. We're also seeing the emergence of really strong tooling everywhere. It's quite a competitive market. Anthropic's Claude Code and the CLI is a really good piece of software. Is it the best software out there in the world? Arguably not. There are competitors coming up that are doing really great things. And again, that will only continue. So I don't think that Claude Code is being replaced now, nor Claude is the best coding model in the world. I think that'll take a lot of toppling. But I think Anthropic are seeing the way things that are going. I'm speculating and trying to get ahead of the game now.
It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, to be honest with you. We've talked a lot about how the open source local models are starting to snap at the heels of the frontier models. Absolutely. And how, the small local models now are, as good, if not better, than the frontier models of not that long ago. It's really, really fascinating, and the hardware as well. That's really starting to
all of it,
help support it. So it's going to be really interesting, and obviously the developers, they're fully aware of the options. It's not as if Anthropic have an audience who aren't informed. So in many respects, it's not a case of they can take that audience for granted, So they are, the developers who are using Anthropic, they are fully informed of what's happening out there in the open source community, the open source world, and like you said, things like the Nano Code and what have you. So it's interesting. I guess 100%. The value proposition from their point of view has to be really on point to maintain their dominance.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating because, as well, is developers are, as you said, are hyper aware of the situation in many ways. And what happened with Anthropic cutting access has triggered a huge backlash to Anthropic. Developers aren't happy about it, even if you can speculate other reasoning as I have, but even if the quoted reason is for economics and to protect their very heavily subsidized business, even if there is a sound reason for it, it's still left developers disgruntled. And I think that I think that Anthropic have made a mistake here. I think that they should definitely be considering other business options and to not keep this around forever. And I don't have an answer to that. I think these companies are just going to have to adapt.
Well, what's your thoughts in terms of why has there been this anger, this pushback against what's happened by the developer community? Because ultimately you could just say, well, we're a business, and we've got to make sure people are using our tools in the way that they should. If you want to use our solutions, then you've got to play by the rules of the game that we set out. And, we're all very transparent. This is our pricing. You get the best product. Yeah. What's the big deal?
Yeah. Well, this is it. As I said, I'm not 100% saying that it's that it's founded and that people should expect this. However, I think within the AI space there is definitely a feeling from developers, at the very least, of being in these walled gardens. It's happened time and time again that companies will lure you in to their ecosystem at a very cheap cost point to acquire users because it's so hyper competitive, only to be rug pulled and the prices get hiked or the limits get shrinked to keep it at the same price that they were originally sold on. This has happened time and time again within the AI space, specifically for developers at the very least. And I think the developers just feel the same thing here. Is there's always complaints about usage limits going down, and now they're being cut off from using other tools, and we're just seeing this walled garden come in and in and in. And I think that's where a lot of the anger gets brought up from developers, because it's just they feel like they're being taken for mugs, basically.
Yeah, so it's their ability and flexibility to do what they want with the tools that they want, pricing
or
changing,
at least I was going to say, or at least
the rules
if
of the game changing.
Yeah, exactly. If at the very least, if they are being brought in and they're told this is how much you're paying and this is what you're getting, then they expect, I think people, well, not even developers, just people would expect that it stays like that. But instead, we're seeing goalposts moving and the rules changing, and that annoys people.
Absolutely, and interesting. Well, listen, guys, I think that's a wrap. But if you're a developer, if you're in this space, let us know why you're annoyed, what your frustration is with them. It'd be great to hear what you've got to say, what your thoughts are, and maybe what your thoughts are for the future, like we sort of touched on. So that would be interesting. So yeah, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and in the meantime, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and do all those really amazing things. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your support, and let's keep building. All right, guys, take care for now.
Catch you guys.